Hello, and welcome to the first episode of my Roadrunner Devlog series. I've been streaming some of my development process for this game I'm working on called Roadrunner. And I just wanted to make a weekly devlog series to kind of highlight the most interesting parts of what I was working on that week and show off some of my progress. So this is going to be that series. What you just saw was me finally getting some bullet instantiation going. Um, but obviously they're just cubes without rigid bodies. And generally I'm just going to be playing some background footage, either from just my streams or footage I record when I'm just doing development, and then I'll talk over it and slow it down when it gets interesting, like I just did. So here I'm just working on some bullet hole effects with some sprites and a particle system. I pretty easily made a bullet hole sprite just by warping two circles in Photoshop like you just saw. And then I bring that into Unity here, add some particle effects and instantiate it whenever a bullet hits a surface. And then I have a bullet hole. There was a bug here where I had a setting in the project quality settings that stopped particles from being rendered when they were really close to a surface, which is supposed to make things look better, but in the case of bullet holes where the particles are always really close to the surface, that was messing up some of the rendering, and I had to turn that off. And then we just make little object pools for the bullets and the bullet holes, and that was pretty much what I got done in my first day. So now I just kind of wanted to take a break and talk a little bit about what I actually want this game to be and what my plans are for it. So at the moment, I'm really just trying to focus on getting good multiplayer FPS mechanics down, because I know that's going to be a very important part of my final game. But I'm really aiming for the game to end up being a survival game. I don't want to get too much into the nitty-gritty details of my final vision for the game yet, because I haven't really playtested many of those ideas, and I don't know if they're going to be as fun as I thought. So for the time being, we're going to focus on good multiplayer FPS mechanics and fun survival game mechanics. And then we'll see kind of where that takes us, and I'll try and steer it in the direction of this idea I have. But if the fun takes us somewhere else, I won't be too committed to that idea. So, what happened on day 2 of the project? Well, I actually added online multiplayer. I did this very early on because I knew I wanted the game to be a multiplayer game, and I wanted to make sure that the other features I was adding would work with multiplayer. This proved to be a harder challenge and an easier challenge than I initially expected. Unity's relay system made just getting a friend that's on a different computer on their home Wi-Fi onto my server very easy, which I was surprised by. I thought I might have to do some port forwarding, but the hard part was just wrapping my head around how multiplayer actually works. And kind of the picture I have in my head now is that there are actually multiple instances of the game running, and they just have to tell each other important information in order to keep the instances synced up. So, for example, the player positions is pretty important information, so they just send that to each other as fast as they can and try and make the players in the same position. And then things like shooting bullets actually really confused me, because I would have the server spawn them in all the clients and then shoot them. But what that did was it actually made the bullets feel very laggy for the client that shot them, because the server would spawn them where the server thought the player was, not where the player was on their version of the game. And since I don't have client prediction yet, all the bullets would go where you were looking a couple milliseconds ago. And just to fix this for the time being, I made the bullets client side, which I know is not best practice for a competitive multiplayer game, but it removes all the latency from them and makes them feel very reactive. So essentially how that works is the bullet is only spawned on the client that shot, and if that bullet hits the client's image of the enemy, it just tells the server, hey, I hit this enemy, deal damage to it. And that does make it very easy for hackers because they could just start sending messages to the server that they've shot every player on the server 20 times, and that would not be very fun. But for the more casual setting I'm working in now, it works fine, and it's the solution I'm going to use. So I actually ended up spending about 2 or 2.5 days really fine-tuning the bullet and the gun systems because I really wanted them to feel nice and crisp and fun. And then I went on to the movement, and fun was really my main goal with the movement too. And I think the best way to achieve fun movement is momentum-based movement. It really allows for a lot of interesting emergent gameplay, in my opinion, where you're bouncing around and you have like almost like tricks you can do where you hit a specific jump and you have just enough momentum to make it over to this other platform. And then I also added, as part of these momentum-based mechanics, wall running and sliding as ways to keep your momentum. So as long as you're wall running and sliding around the map, you actually won't lose your momentum. But as soon as you just stand there, you pretty quickly lose your momentum, and you also get much more responsive movement. So I spent a day or two refining movement as well, mainly just focusing on making it as fun and intuitive as possible. I added things like backwards wall running and wall running without moving, so that you can jump between walls to get up buildings, and I ended up with some really fun movement. So I thought I might just end the video with this footage. This is basically where the game is at right now. I've added some gun models so that the rectangle you're holding onto actually turns into a gun sometimes if you pick one up. And I added this inventory system, which I think you'll get to see later in this clip. And yeah, it's all feeling pretty good at the moment. What are my next steps though? I really want to add more items to make use of the inventory system. I would like to add effects to the guns, recoil animations, stuff like that. Status effect grenades is another thing on the roadmap. I think it would be cool to have status effect grenades you could throw at your friends. And then really far down the line, actually not that far, but towards the end of next week or maybe mid next week, I want to add cars and a procedural environment around the city so that you're not just trapped in the city, but you can actually travel around with your car and go maybe to other cities and loot them and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll leave you guys with this footage and I'll see you next week. Goodbye. What gun was that?
What was one of the guns?
Was it the double barrel or the triple barrel?
Yeah.
God damn it. I want to find one. Oh, I see your ass. What the fuck, bro? Oh my god. Let's go. You're already low.